Hello, everyone. We have a great show for you this week. Joel reports on the Sandia Blade Conference down in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And then we have a discussion about the California offshore wind auction. How much money is going to be bid in that auction in December? And then we have a special interview from our time at Wind Energy Hamburg, where I discuss the latest news from Rope Robotics with their CEO, Martin Hughes Bjerge. I'm Alan Hall, president of WeatherGuard Lightning Tech, and I'm here with my good friend from Wind Power Lab, Joel Saxum. Rosemary is on a well-deserved break, and this is the Uptime Wind Energy Podcast. Well, Joel, you're down in Albuquerque at the Sandia Blade Conference. Do you want to give us a little bit of highlights of what's happening down there this week?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the last count, there was about 200 people here, which is a good turnout for a technical workshop focusing on just one portion. So the majority of the people you're seeing here, a lot of owner-operators, but because it is Sandia, all the smart researchers are here from Sandia and NREL and Berkeley, and I met a couple of guys from GE that are up by you in the Schenectady, and they're a part of research, but they're like, we work a little bit in aerospace, a little bit in wind, a little bit of this. So some really cool, smart people here, of course, but a lot of good, interesting topics. They've got the conference or workshop set up kind of neat. I like it because it's 4 days, right? But if you are just able to come in to listen to some panel discussions, all the panel discussions are on Tuesday. All the podium talks are on Wednesday. And then it's bookmarked on Monday, there's like working group kind of things. And then on Thursday, it's the same thing. So they're looking at talking through some standards and some other stuff on those in like more of a town hall type situation.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, the panels were great. Some of the panels one of them was full of owners and operators, and getting to hear some of their pain points and the things that they're doing was great. And then that led into today, which is Wednesday, of a lot of podium talks. But one thing I wanted to touch on as well is that the people from Sandia put the conference on. And they opened it with saying, "Hey, we're just a bunch of engineers. We threw this conference together in our spare time in between experiments." But they've done a great job. The hotel and stuff that we're at has been fantastic. They've organized some events, put the program together in a very, very good way. So congrats and kudos to the Sandia people for putting this thing on. And the content has been fantastic. If you're into blades, as of course, Alan, you and I are, that's our bread and butter here. It's all blades, every talk, whether it's talking about instrumenting blades with the new sensor technologies that are out there, or problems with lightning, or problems with data analytics, or what are we doing with all the data we're collecting from drone inspections and SCADA data and all this stuff. So now it's the last few conferences in the last few years has been, let's get as much data as we can. And now everybody's going like, whoa, what are we going to do with all this data?
Right.
So being able to listen to it's less commercial, more technical, more of an open talk around some of the issues people are having and how they're solving them. So those kind of things of course, there's a lot of value in that for other owner operators. And then sitting right next to them is the actual blade design engineers. So there's people from Siemens Gamesa here, Envision here, TPI's got a good presence, and so it's a lot of smart blade design engineers and whatnot, and we kind of talk sometimes about OEMs not really wanting to share too much. They're still not doing that in a formal fashion, but at least in the coffee line and around cookies and lunch, you can hear some conversations that are a little bit more open, which is nice to hear.
It's amazing what a cookie will bring out of somebody, isn't it?
Yeah, a good cup of coffee,
Right. Well, what are some of the top issues? I'm guessing monitoring systems. We saw that in Hamburg. That monitoring seems to be a big issue, even though the OEMs are not really providing monitoring systems directly on the blades. Is that one of the discussion points? Is what's everybody doing about monitoring?
Yeah, so there's, one of the owner operator panels was a bunch of them standing up there going, hey, now there's a bunch of options out in the marketplace, but we really haven't settled on which one is the best for us. So you hear them talking about getting some more tests done in the field. And, of course, those things have to cook. You can't just go out and see if they're good or not in a day. So putting them into different situations. There's some standard stuff. Like everybody knows how to get API handles and data back. Like that's fine. But what is the best system for each individual operator and their pain points they have? And then also, again, talking coffee and cookie conversations, they had a kind of a reception last night, and I was talking to one of the people from Sandia, from the actual Sandia Laboratories. Oh, fun fact, 13,000 employees in the Sandia Laboratories. I bet you didn't know that.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's a lot of people. Okay.
Yeah. So I was talking with him. This very small portion of them are in wind, just so everybody's clear. That's mostly other things.
Yes.
But I was talking with him and he said like, hey, we're thinking about this idea of a project where we basically are going to try to sponsor or get sponsors on board as a co-op to get a turbine where we can just test anything. Like you want to test an anti-icing thing, put it on there. You want to test a sensor, put it on there. You want to test this, and it's sponsored from the industry forward. And so he's like, what's the best way to do this? So we talked about some ideas like, okay, if someone is in West Texas and they're putting up a new wind farm, if you could sister onto that and say, hey, one of those turbines, what if we, the costs get reduced because of, bulk costs in building that wind farm. But if you could get some, coalition of people together, and my thing to him as we share on the podcast, and this is what, our goal here is to spread news and technology and what's going on. I said, you guys need to be more vocal about it. I said, if you're going to put it up there, don't put barriers to entry to this turbine. Like, don't make it, you have to qualify for a grant to get on there, or you have to know someone who knows someone who knows someone. I said, make this thing so visible that any person that's coming into the wind industry with a new product has access to it. And he was like, man, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Because he said, you're a taxpayer. I said, yeah, I pay way too much in taxes. And he said, so we're here for you. So that's great. So let's make that happen. Let's make Sandia Labs more accessible. Right. If I had one thing to take away from this that I wouldn't normally have thought is some of the research that's being done and the money that's being spent at a lot of these, like with ARPA-E and the DOE and NREL and Sandia. And I've seen this before in Los Alamos and some of the other, government labs. The things that they're spending money on might not be completely aligned with the goals of the general public. Right. The research. So one of the biggest things right now in wind is, okay, how do we lower LCOE? So I would think that there'd be a big project centered around lowering LCOE. Well, there's nothing like that. So it would be nice to see, you and I and Rosemary have talked about it before, some of these government funds being spent to get products and solutions and services from TRL 5 to TRL 9 instead of TRL 0 to TRL 4 or 5,
Right. That seems to be the little twist, right? Is there's an initiative to get things just barely off the ground. And in the meantime, we're installing wind turbines off the coast of California in a couple of years, and we don't have any plan to go do that. That's quite defined yet, right?
Yeah, one of the things that actually I'd like to share to the listeners as well, and I think anybody that works in the wind industry can see this and vouch for it, is some of the conversation actually was innovation cycles in wind are too fast right now. It used to be, like, and Rosemary says this too about blade design. It used to be like you spent a year in designing a blade and testing a little bit and, doing some statistical models. And then you built a scaled model and then you tested that. And then you went out and there was a time. And then that blade was good in the market for 3 to 5 years. And now the innovation cycle is so fast and the newest technology. And there's like this race to be the best at everything by a millimeter.
Sure.
And so during one of the panels, the guy asked the question, so how do we slow this innovation cycle down, to one of the asset owners? And he was like, I guess it's on us, the asset owners themselves, and that are calling for all this new stuff. So that's something that's been talked about in quite a few circles here that I've been in, and some panels and some other talks about. It's one of the issues we have. And then we tied it back in a conversation with someone too. The other day I read an article from the CEO of Vestas, I believe it was, where he said, our pricing of our turbines isn't really enough to sustain our business model. We have to raise our prices. Well, if you slowed down on the innovation cycle and you weren't throwing so much money at it as the market demands, if that market demand wasn't as high for these new products, you wouldn't have to throw so much money at innovation, and you might be able to, everybody take a deep breath, install some of the things that we know work, and stop throwing new products at the market and just build and scale these things to get to our energy goals without trying to do everything at once. So there's a lot of opinions on it. That's just some of the report from the Sandia conference here.
So is there any consensus on a number of issues? Is there consensus about standardizing some of the way we do things? I know that there's a new ANSI standard that's coming out, and we'll discuss that in the podcast here, but it does seem like it's still a little bit of the Wild West, and everybody's going their own direction, and things are still rapidly developing. Is there any sense of like, all right, everybody slow down a second, let's figure this thing out, because we're just going to be spinning our wheels and blowing millions of dollars if we're not careful? There's
talk of it, but no action on it, right? So one of the things that someone had brought up as well is, there's these standards, there's the different IEC standards and some other things. And when you really read into them, some of it's pretty vague, right? They kind of put enough in there to say, yeah, you got to get to this point. Someone from one of the owner operators was saying there's a blade owners group with Bladina, and Birgit Junker from RWE runs it over there in the EU. She was speaking, which is nice to have her over here. An EU presence. She was the only one that I know of speaking from that side of the pond. And she was talking like, hey, we had at one point in time delivered what we think from the owners needs to be done in these standards. This is the things that we want in our blades. And it's like it wasn't listened to. The OEMs still don't quite want to share information. They don't quite want to, play ball with all the owner operators. So they're stuck figuring things out. And they're kind of in that spot. Like one of the guys from NextEra was speaking. He's like, we have 12,000 turbines. And we've kind of just figured that once they go out of warranty, it's on us. So we bolstered our engineering groups, and we're taking the steps to make sure that we do that, because we can't or we won't rely on the OEMs to get to that point.
Wow. It's kind of telling, isn't it?
Yeah. It's the same thing that we always talk about. The OEMs don't want to share engineering designs. They don't want to really play ball. They just kind of, here you go, and we'll move forward.
Well, is the Sandia conference held annually? I know it was not held because of COVID for a couple of years, but is it an annual event, or is it every other year, sort of like Hamburg is?
I think it's every other year. I was looking at some classical stuff, and it was like 14, 16, 18.
Oh,
I don't think it was held in 20. Maybe they did a virtual one in there or something, but as we all did a couple of years of virtual meetings and conferences, it's so nice to be back with bumping elbows with people and meeting new faces. And
well, that's the question: is do these things need to happen every year to be effective? Like every other year I get on the big conferences, the Hamburg conference, you couldn't do every year. It would just wipe people out. There's so much work going into that one. But in these smaller conferences where you're bringing people together to talk technical shop, does every year make more sense because of the speed?
Yeah. I guess there's two thoughts on that. I think there could be a conglomeration of a lot of things, right? Like I don't see the need for ACP offshore this week and ACP regular conference in a couple more months. Like to me, it's why they're both ACP events. They both deal with the exact same thing. Why not make one big one and put them all together? Yeah. And O&M, like why do we have three of these? Don't get me wrong. I love to, go to San Diego to Coronado for O&M and go here and go there. Like, but it's draining on my budgets. But it's also draining on my lovely better half likes to have me at home too. So I don't see why we can't put some of these together. Like the O&M conference, make it 5 days long. Make 1 day offshore, 1 day O&M, and a couple of days of everything if you want to separate some stuff up like that.
Come and go.
Yeah, so I don't see the need for, and like some of these things as well, I believe, it's capitalism. Some of it's market grab. Some of people are just trying to make money. Like we do the Blades USA one. I liked Blades USA last year, but
it was good.
It was like $2,000 to walk in the door. That's someone trying to make money. That's
oh yeah, they have.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to pay for those things. Those conferences are expensive. Yeah. I do think in aerospace. I'll use my aerospace hat for a minute. In aerospace, what we tended to do was go to OEM sites and have meetings there and try to share information. That's what the owners groups do. Also, something similar in wind. But you think getting people together a little more often, once a year for sure, would help with the communication, because we all go home to our separate little offices and we're all working away, but we're all going in different directions, and there's no consensus. Like, I didn't know that was going on in the industry because I'm too busy working on some other thing.
I talked to the guy he works for Envision. Now, Envision is an oddity in the U.S. because it's a Chinese manufacturer, and they have their blade design offices in Colorado. And they're really the only one set up that way. And he's like, this gentleman I was talking to, he used to work for Siemens. He used to work for, he worked at Sandia for a little while. It was GE, a couple of different players. And he's like, yeah, it's weird working for Envision now because I don't know what's going on in the industry in the US because that doesn't affect me. He's like, so I like coming to the event so I can actually catch up on what everybody else is doing, you know? So that was one perspective of it. But I think that this having a conference that's really technical is nice. But I don't see the need for the more commercial ones to be so many. Could pull them together and make one big one. That's the way I look at it.
I think industry is going to do that as it ages a little bit. You're going to start seeing consolidation. That has to happen because otherwise it's just, you're right. You were spending too much money traveling and not enough time with the right people in the room doing the right thing. Yeah. Yeah.
So the definite value to this one here on the technical side, listening to some of the basically O&M strategies around what do you do with analytics and data, and how are you classifying blade failures, and what is it? The Ed from RWE was here, and his beautiful presentation on exactly how RWE is handling their massive fleet. Like, they're huge, right? They have so many blades. And he was like, okay, this is how we handle this. This is how we handle this. We have a logic this way, and we do this way. And he was very clear in saying, like, while AI is out there and machine learning is out there, like right now, we don't use as much of it because we really need to be able to focus on the things. And he's like, some of it is we have a team of 5 blade engineers, and a lot of it, the things we do, boil down to judgment calls from engineers.
Oh, sure.
You know, and so they were very frank about it, and that was kind of.
It's the reality of the situation, right? It's the reality of the situation. You have to produce power. You got to keep on top of the projects, and it's nice to tinker in new technologies, but at the end of the day, that's not necessarily what you're getting paid for.
Yeah, you got to make sure
it's right about that.
Reliability of your blades, that's what you're there for. So get that done, and then you can play with stuff in the background.
Well, that sounds like a really good conference. I haven't attended that one in particular, so it's good to hear from this conference in Sandia. There's like we said, there's so many conferences going on, it's hard to keep track, but it's nice to hear that the industry is coalescing around blades down in Albuquerque this week. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Get the latest on wind industry news, business, and technology sent straight to you every week. Sign up for the Uptime Tech newsletter at weatherguardwind.com/news.
Joel, the first California offshore wind auction is scheduled for December 6th, and I don't know if you put in your application to buy a plot of ocean out there. I know I thought about it for about 30 seconds when I realized, you're talking about millions and millions of dollars. There's no way to do that. But they're going to lease 5 separate areas and 350,000 square acres of ocean. And the goal is to generate 4.5 gigawatts of power and deliver that to about 1.5 million homes. So far, when the notice was put out, they had listed 43 bidders that had been vetted by the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. And it's the usual players and a bunch more: Avangrid, BP, Clearway, EDF, EDPR, Equinor, Invenergy, Ørsted, RWE, Shell. So there's a number of big players there, and the question is, what are they going to pay for this thing? There seems to be some unknowns, and I'm curious if the experience like Equinor had in the Bight and in some of those auctions off the coast of New York is going to play into the decision in the Pacific. because I think everybody's trying to feel their way out still on the Atlantic side of America.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're going to something a little more complex with floating wind and all the unknowns in the Pacific Ocean. Do prices, do you think the bids are going to drop substantially from what we saw over on the East Coast of America?
I do, and there's a couple of reasons. The first one being just I'm looking at history. When the bite auction happened, it was crazy expensive. And then when they had the auction right after that in South Carolina, North Carolina, it was way cheaper.
North Carolina, yeah.
It went for like 150 million for a spot instead of $1 billion, you know. So I think that's one thing. Also, it's so the capital might not be as easy to get for these companies this time around. The second one is it's so risky, right? It's very risky to do. It's risky for it's risky to go paint houses in California.
Yes.
like it's just risky business there, right? So,
yes.
And we had reviewed some of this stuff a few months ago on the show here about the different bullet points they had put in about investment in the local communities, investment in local workforces, and that's all good things. But those are also very expensive. So personally, I've done a lot of work in California in my past, and I know that when we were doing a job in Texas or Oklahoma or North Dakota, and we took that same crew and we went to California, we automatically put like 22% on top.
Ooh.
And that was because it was like because once you were there, you had to pay different tax rates for to employment taxes, unemployment insurance taxes, all those things just for employees that are based out of there are so much more expensive. That leaves completely alone the idea that putting people in hotels there is more expensive and because these things are going to be built there. I think the area is one of them is like off of San Francisco. Imagine having to bring in a workforce and camp out in hotels in San Francisco.
The world's most expensive area.
Yeah, it's going to be ridiculous. So those are little things about cost, but the regulatory environment in California is inherently risky. While they want to see green energy, and everybody else does as well at certain levels, it's a very risky play. That we haven't even talked about the fact that this is going to be floating. There's going to be no bottom fixed stuff here. Unless you're putting it in the, San Francisco Bay, it's not going to be bottom fixed. And they're definitely not going there. No. So they're going to be floating. And we don't, when you start talking about the development cost of a project, you have to understand all of the infrastructure, all the permitting fees, all of this, there's the whole cost model. And now they've been vetted, so the idea has been out there for a year, 2 years. So people have been kind of in the background working on this thing, but saying, okay, now we're going to have the lease, and now you need your prices by December 6th. That's less than 2 months away. I don't think it's going to be as competitive. I don't think the prices will be there. I mean, on this list, there's only a few that actually have experience with offshore floating wind that have actually put it out in the world and are deriving power from it. So, I mean, I'm just thinking high wind in Scotland, right? I think that was, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's Equinor was a big part of that at the beginning.
Equinor, I think, has experience with that, yeah.
But Equinor's got experience with some offshore, and I know most of the others don't. They haven't touched it. So it's very risky from almost every standpoint you look at it. There's nothing safe about this one in my mind.
So how do you hedge your bets here? You feel like you probably want to buy some of the territory just because maybe the first company in figures out how to make this happen, or a GE or a Siemens Gamesa figures out how to make all this work, and then the risk goes down. Mm-hmm. How do you weigh that when you're bidding with 40 other companies for this land or this ocean?
So, one of the things that I like to talk about, I really love economics, so I talk about with people in general, is California in the U.S. is the land of risk. So in a land of risk, you can lose big, but you can also win big. So if you think about the population there and the things that are going on in that state, while you see report after report of people leaving, people moving out, that doesn't change the fact that power prices are high. There's a lot of people there.
Yes.
There will always, if anybody has vacationed to the coast of California, there will always be a lot of people there because it's fantastic. That's my opinion, and I'll stick to it.
It's true.
But so there is, if you have this much space, depending on, if you can get whatever kind of PPA you can sign or whatever, there's a chance that there's actually a lot of money to be made there. And of course, we like to see new development in offshore wind. And if you're one of these first movers to put some utility scale offshore wind in the United States, that's a nice feather in the cap.
Yeah, I'm wondering though also with the inflation and the interest rates bumping up, how much effect that's going to have on suppressing the bid prices. Mm-hmm. Your cost of cash goes up, right? Cost of borrowing goes way up, and you don't know where that's stopping at the moment either. So again, it's one of those. It's gonna be a depressant on where I think that the peak will be. And remember, some of these auctions have gone over a day long. They've been into day 2. I think there's one that was in day 3, right? So they're still trying to figure out where the marketplace is. And if you read the notice, I was reading through the notice. They have a practice run on December 5th. They have a mock auction, and I assume that so everybody makes sure all their data communication systems work. They can put a bid in and it properly pops up. It's kind of like the NFL draft, right?
Hopefully it's like $1. Yeah,
right.
$1,
right.
Bob.
I got a good right. So I'm sure that I just thought that was kind of amusing. Like, hey, we got to make sure the system works because when we get to the real day, you got one shot at it, and if you miss it, it's over. But then those auctions evolve, right? So it's a series of rounds, and as a price goes up, obviously more and more people start dropping out, and you kind of get whittled to the top. I would be curious to see who the last 3 are. Like who's really in it till the end, and how far are they willing to go? Because it'll tell a lot about the philosophy as a company, I think.
How cool would it be though? Like now you said NFL draft. I'm thinking about when they flash to like the camera scenes of. I'm a Packers fan, right? So they're like, this is the Packers war room during the draft. Like to be a fly on the wall in one of those in like BP's room. Like, ooh, what are they going to say? What's going on? But
the war rooms.
Yeah, the war room, man. So like, I think the one thing that we shouldn't miss here in conversation, Alan, is this is the first auction after the IRA bill is passed.
Yes.
So how does that play into it? Right now, they know that they can get so now switch gears, talking vessels, because you need vessels over there. There's no vessels over there. Like Port of Seattle's got some. There's no work. There's not a lot of. There's container ships coming in and out and some tugboats. Like that's it on that whole coast. There's no other infrastructure out to sea that needs to be really. I mean, there's some pipelines and stuff out there, but that really needs to be maintained like it is in the Gulf Coast or like it is on the East Coast, where there's some actual. So all of those, any resource that you need, is either sailing through the Panama Canal from somewhere else, or it's got to get built. So now you have funds, or maybe not funds, but tax relief. To build some of these vessels and stuff. So we'll see what I know, like Crowley's a big player on that side of the world in logistics between Seattle and Alaska and all that stuff. So maybe we'll see some. I'm again a fly on the wall thing, and I'm thinking like, what thoughts are going through their heads now, and how does the IRA bill play into this? And I guess we'll have to wait until December 6th to see.
Yeah. Well, do you think these companies have war rooms where they make these bids? You think there's 10 people in a room and they
have to?
I guess for as much money as at stake, I would think they would have to, but it's hard to envision that happening in this auction, but it must.
I'm thinking that if you're talking the names in this list, the CEO of Ørsted is definitely at least on a Teams call with the whole team while this is going on, because it's so high profile. Wow. It has to be, and if not, like, more power to their organizations and their processes that they figure out and they trust all the people that are put in place. That's great. But I guess I'm imagining a movie in my head. All these people sitting around, someone smashing their fist on the table, like, damn, BP got us again.
Well, it does lead to a documentary style of thinking about this, because it would be interesting to see behind the scenes of what's happening. Not so much you have to know all the intimate details, but just to see the interactions and how that all plays out, because it is a time limited thing. You have to have your bids in. You have to figure out where you're willing to go. I'm sure there's a lot of backroom dealings, last minute trades that are happening, coalescing with your suppliers.
You can't trade your quarterback for a first rounder here for the next year, so it's a little bit different.
Well, I don't know.
We'll sell you this wind farm if you get out of the lease. Maybe.
Well, for as much money as we're talking about, it wouldn't shock me. Like where's the Walmarts in this, right? Like who are some of the people going to buy this power? Where are they in this? Where's the Amazons? Where's the Facebooks of the world?
There too. They might have someone in the war room.
Wouldn't you think so? If I was Facebook and going to use a bunch of this power coming off the coast, which I'm invariably going to do, don't I have a seat in that war room?
I think so. Here's another one for you. Like Alan, you have a long engineering and aerospace background as well as wind. Myself, wind, offshore oil and gas, onshore oil and gas. Think about the tender process for this thing and what kind of a team puts that. Because I've put some tenders together with some really smart people before, and I mean it's for small projects weeks to put tenders together to win and then when you win it, you're like, yeah, it's awesome. Imagine the tender and how thick and how much due diligence and how many things, the size of the team and coordinating all that. You have to have project managers, plural, just to get the tender done and coordinate the whole thing. Like it's nothing to shake a stick at.
Well, in the risk, I think one of the early risks, we had talked to Kevin Ewing, who was an attorney out in the Washington, D.C. area, who was helping with some of the bite auction at the time. I remember him describing, and you can go back and watch that episode, but he was describing like what you get with this auction, what you actually win. You win the right to apply for a permit to review the site and to put turbines out there at some point. So it's just to open the dang door. And then the fun really starts, like you're saying, the fun really starts when, okay, we're in. Now what? now the hard work begins. And I thought writing the check was going to be the hard work. No. That's just the beginning. It's going to get a lot more fun after that. And those sort of things. This is such a complicated beast when these auctions happen and what happens afterwards. That's why I think a documentary on Netflix would be really cool.
One of the things that I've seen happen as well, and anybody that follows the industry, especially the offshore wind industry coming to the U.S., you've seen now, okay, Ørsted wins a site in New York, right? Ørsted doesn't come and develop it. XYZ Wind does, and that is 2 people from this company and 2 people from that company and 5 people from this company that run it, and they're all these different consortiums and LLCs and JVs and all these things. So now not only do you have all of these different companies popping up, starting up, but they're not really popping up, starting up. They're just people coming from the other ones that won the auction to actually develop the thing, like the Vineyard Wind One organization, whatever. So now you're not only are you doing that, but all of a sudden you've got a whole new company that you've got to coalesce the team, get that culture going, get the processes in place, all this stuff. And of course they have help from the parent companies and whatever, but that just makes it so much more complicated. When I see so-and-so get appointed as the new SVP of development or the new CEO of such and such wind, you're like, what is this company? And all of a sudden you see their website and you're like, do they have like a $10 billion budget? It's like, oh, that's actually Ørsted and Equinor together in one company. Oh, okay. So, it's just like there's just so much juggling, so many balls in the air for these things to happen.
And that's why you see a lot of turnover, I think. It's such a fast-moving, expensive game, I'll call it, that their enterprise that they're in, that it's really hard to find that perfect person to get you from the beginning to the end. It is almost like running an NFL football team in a sense, right? If you're rebuilding, it takes a different coach, and if you're kind of halfway there, it's a second coach. As you get to go into the Super Bowl, you probably have a third coach, right? So there's just different time frames and different people needed for each of these little phases. I'm thinking that the companies that are involved in that in the United States are really are finding that out. That the person you installed in there to kick this thing off was probably whiz bang at getting the energy, getting it started, and then the grind out work has to start. Different personality, so you have to prepare for that. And I wonder, is everybody thinking that when they start? Maybe they are. Maybe because these projects are so long, they realize like I could retire on this project if I wanted to. How do we manage that? How do we handle that? This is just a fascinating piece of Americana, which is what we learn here in America, obviously, we're last to the table on floating wind. Essentially, we are. But yet we're going to go through that same learning process the Europeans did several years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows where we end up? But supposedly with a lot more power offshore, I guess that's where we want to go.
And a crazy thing here, Alan, is like we're still. I mean, offshore wind ACP was this week as well, right? None of our team, none of our crew, none of our network really went there directly, but because there's too many of these things to go to.
Yeah.
But that conference, and I saw stuff all over LinkedIn, and this is a great conference. We're moving forward so fast. We're doing all this stuff. We have 6 turbines in the water in the United States. Seven. Sorry, seven.
We have 7.
Five and 2, right? Yeah.
5 and 2. Right.
We have 7 turbines in the water, and this is what's going on, right? There's companies changing hands already, and like buyouts happening, and these things, and it's like, man, this is crazy. We haven't even stabbed another monopile,
Right.
So
there's a lot more to come. And as this auction happens, we'll follow up after the auction and just see where we're at. See how many hundreds of millions or billions of dollars is put down for these leases. It will be a really interesting time.
Lightning is an act of God, but lightning damage is not. Actually, it's very predictable and very preventable. Strike Tape is a lightning protection system upgrade for wind turbines made by WeatherGuard. It dramatically improves the effectiveness of the factory LPS so you can stop worrying about lightning damage. Visit weatherguardwind.com to learn more, read a case study, and schedule a call today.
We have Rope Robotics CEO and founder, Martin Bjerge, who is all the way from
Denmark,
where all the cool, innovative things happen in wind, it seems like. And Rope Robotics is one of those.
We call it silicon wind in Denmark.
Well, that's a good way to describe it, actually. That's kind of what it is, yeah. It's there's a lot of new technology, as we've seen here. We're at Wind Energy Hamburg. Today is the last day, Friday, and we were just talking about the number of new technologies that are popping up. You're not new, though.
Not completely. We've been there for a couple of years,
yes.
And we have our robot in operation now for a couple of years. And
right.
But we can also see there's starting to come other robotic solutions out there. It's really interesting to see what's going on in that market.
Well, there's been a big shift.
Yeah.
From technicians, because you've run out of technicians.
I don't know if you run out of them, but it's really difficult to get the qualified technicians, yes. And get enough technicians trained to actually have the level of skills that's required to do a good job.
Right, and speed is of the essence.
It is.
Operators.
There's so many
owners.
Turbines out there that need some tender loving care.
Right, and they need it relatively quickly. They want to get in, do the job, keep power production up, and that's where you come in.
Exactly. So we can train the technician significantly faster in being able to operate a robot than it is to get all the skills and certificates to work from rope.
Sure.
So definitely we can speed up some of the processes there. Of course, then there's the whole health and safety aspect of having a robot sitting up there in the height working instead of having people working from rope or platform or whatever it is. So definitely we're increasing health and safety there.
So if you haven't seen Rope Robotics YouTube channel,
please do.
You need to go look at it first, but you have a couple of key things that you're doing for blades at the moment. Do you want to describe some of those? Yeah,
so our main thing is leading edge protections. Yeah. So we have the tool and capabilities to sand and clean the leading edge, and then we apply a liquid LEP. We're using a product from Technos called Technoblade.
Okay.
Technoblade 9000. But in principle, we could use other liquid LEP systems as well. But this is this product we have chosen, and that's the one we are running with.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Do operators want to choose that material? It's relying on your experience.
It's a really nice product. It has great LEP performance. So
So the robot performs what tasks that a technician would do in terms of LEP?
So it's the full process basically.
Oh, good. Okay.
So it's cleaning, sanding, and applying the coating. So everything.
And now, is it limited to certain sizes of blades, or is it any size blade?
we can. There's the problem is actually the smaller blades. So
okay.
So if I forget to, we tried a. I think it was a V47.
Oh wow!
That's a
That's
very small turbine,
is, yeah.
and that was too small. So there's not enough space on those blades for the robot. But as soon as we get to these blades around the 30-meter length or something like that,
which
then
the vast majority are today.
Then the robot fits very fine on these blades, and we can do the work.
Wow. Okay. And how did this past summer go? You were out on some campaigns?
Yeah, we done a project together with GEV and we. It's really nice project. Good partners there, and and had a nice project. We did a bunch of turbines in U.S. Montana.
Good.
So LEP applied there, and it's actually on that project it was a hybrid solution, you can call it. So it's a combination of some shells at the very tip, and then the liquid LEP a little bit higher in the blade.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's you can say there's no doubt that Polytech has a fantastic product in their shells, and they and so having that and the very high erosion zone in some cases actually makes sense.
Yeah, it just the combination does make sense. You know, put the product where it's best used.
Exactly. So
you're in the United States. I assume that means you are global at this point.
Pretty much. We're mainly focusing on the European area and the North American area. It's not like, if I get a call from elsewhere, we're probably also going to do that.
Sure.
But that's where we focus.
Okay. And so does a robot go with you? Like, did you ship the robot with you and a crew of a couple?
We have a setup in US with the. So the main thing is we have a control center, a mobile control center, which is basically a trailer with a little bit of with some computer screens and stuff like that. So that's where we run the robot from. So we have such a trailer in North America, and we have in Europe. So if we have to go other places, that also means we would have to
take stuff with you. Well, that makes sense to do that in the United States. There's so many wind turbines. You need a base of operations, so to speak. In the U.S.
And then we ship the robots in. So the trailer we build locally, and then we ship the robots in.
So the last time we spoke with you was probably just pre-pandemic. It may have been in 2019. It's been a couple of years.
Yeah, I can't actually remember. But I think it's a couple of years.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time, the discussion was, anybody go back and look on YouTube and see the episode, that your robot has essentially universal pieces. It's sort of plug and play.
Yeah.
If I want to do a specific task, I add an arm and I can do this task.
Yeah.
So it makes it really versatile. What are some of the things that you're thinking about doing? Where's this going now? You have the leading edge protection thing going.
So
what's next?
The last couple of years, we just put all of energy into getting that leading edge system up and running. So that's now running, and commercial product we have there. Go and get it. But we have some R&D work going on, of course, and we have some projects going on actually together with some other technology companies and also universities involved, where we're doing something with force technology and DTU, where we're looking into ultrasonic scannings of the blades.
Oh wow! Okay.
And then we actually just started another project that we got funded by the EU Horizon Europe program.
Okay. Yeah.
And there we also have a collaboration of various partners. So we have EDP as a owner operator, and we have have Technalia, we have Chester University, we have Alerion, and there's a bunch of companies there.
That's really good.
So it's a pretty big consortium there.
Right.
And we're trying to build a system where, for also NDT, but we're looking in some other technologies for inspection, and also how we can do small structural repairs on the blade.
Ooh.
Okay. So actually, there's some of these research guys really looking deep into how we can actually do structural repairs.
Well, that makes a lot of sense because not all structural damage is super deep.
We do see it.
Yeah. And I think we might not go with the really huge cracks in the beginning, but
Right.
get some of the small stuff, be able to do that. So
Well, speed is of the essence all the time. All
Exactly.
the discussion this week is about how quickly can this be done? How much time does it take a technician to be here? How fast can you turn
and
it
it
around?
all boils down to the cost.
And eventually it boils down to cost.
Yeah.
Right. How fast can you put an LEP system onto a blade right now?
Yeah, so it of course it depends
Depends on size.
depends on what's the level of erosion,
sure.
how many meters you want applied, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the stuff we did this summer was a 12-meter LEP, and that's approximately 1 day per blade.
Okay. Wow. All right. Because you have to go all the way from cleaning it up,
Yeah.
fixing it up,
yeah.
getting to a point where you can apply the
Yeah.
LEP is probably the easiest part of that.
The LEP actually only take 10 minutes.
That's all the other structural
so,
repairs
so,
and
so,
fixes.
so it's all the getting everything sanded and cleaned and preparation takes time.
Yeah.
And this is also one of the areas that we are looking into. How can we speed up that part of the process?
Sure.
I really want to be able to do 2 or 3 blades in 1 day. That's where we want to go.
Well, I think it's very doable.
Yeah.
It just takes some experience, which you guys have, right?
Exactly.
And that's an advantage using Rope Robotics compared to some others, is that it's experience. You've done it. You've been out in the field. You've gone through those growing pains. You know where those are.
Exactly.
And you're moving on to the next stage, and it's just going to get quicker and faster and better as you go.
Yeah. We're out there getting some mileage, and
That's
then
what you
of
have
course,
to do.
and exactly, and then speed will also increase over time.
It'll follow naturally with it.
Yeah.
Well, it's great that you get to finally see you. Actually, there's so many people we've met that we've only met on Zoom previously during COVID times, and we're all in one place. I swear, all the wind industries.
It's great to put faces to. We got faces, but
some flesh to some faces.
It's actually see people.
It's been very nice, and it's good to see you. And congratulations! Saw the robot. It's impressive. It's if you haven't seen it, go on YouTube because it's impressive. Definitely.
Or come visit me in Denmark. You're also welcome to do that.
Oh, I'd love to. Just when it's sunny outside, so you can tell me the day it's sunny in Denmark, and we'll come over. Yeah, that sounds good. So, Martin, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, and good luck.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here.
That's going to do it for this week's Uptime Wind Energy podcast. Thanks for listening. Please take a moment and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast platform. Be sure to subscribe in the show notes below to the Uptime Tech News, our weekly newsletter, as well as Rosemary's YouTube channel, Engineering with Rosie. And we'll see you here next week on the Uptime Wind Energy podcast.